Hello, I'm Colin Gallagher, CEO at Onward and Upward, and you're listening to the Association 100 podcast, where each week we interview association leaders from across the country to hear how they're trying new things, taking big risks, and delivering value for their members. We'll explore the realities of what it means to work in and with associations and bring you the insights and inspiration you need to advance your career and make big changes at your association. Let's get started. Welcome back to the A100 podcast. I'm your host, Colin Gallagher, and I'm so excited for today's conversation. We're going to be hitting on some topics that are ones I'm super passionate about with Bennie Johnson, CEO of the American Marketing Association. AMA is the largest community-based marketing association in the world, trusted by marketing and sales professionals to help them discover industry trends. Currently, Bennie serves on the Board of Overseers for Columbia University's School of Professional Studies as a trustee of the Smithsonian Archives of American Art and is a former board chair of the Smithsonian's Anacostia Community Museum. He is also a special advisor to the People's Graphic Design Archive. He thrives on the connections between marketing, technology, education, and innovation. And with experience in strategic and consumer marketing, brand and innovation management, he's drawn to opportunities that allow him to lead and create new modes for business engagement. I know he's going to have so many great insights for our listeners today, and I can't wait to dive in. Bennie, thanks for joining us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. And you're right. You have to sit through the awkward bio at the beginning. It's strange to hear the journey communicated back in that way, but I'm honored to be here and to be a part of this community and conversation.
Well, I'm so excited, and comms and marketing is my wheelhouse, and I love talking about it. So I was so thrilled when we heard we were going to be able to have you on the show here. So to start, I would just love to know a bit more for our audience about your core mission for AMA, and tell us about your membership.
It's really powerfully simple. AMA is committed to being the essential community for marketing. In all the spaces that marketing shows up, whether it's for your organization or individual, or startup, we are a space that brings marketers together to celebrate the best practices and advances of marketing. So our membership in our community is really robust. It includes everyone from students who are just learning about marketing in undergrad all the way to those completing their PhDs. We have practitioners working in for-profit and nonprofit spaces. We have academics who are leading research, and we have executives who come in, not to mention those who are involved in marketing who might not actually identify themselves as marketers, but are doing all of the techniques and advances that marketing brings to their world and their mission. And so that's our audience. It's really robust. It's really global in terms of our context. Although we have been listed as the American Marketing Association as our official name, we are at AMA, and AMA is global by design and intention. And we bring together the best of marketing research and skills and practitioners across the globe.
I love that. And marketing, it can't be just one area anymore. It's everywhere. We're all doing it. So
Right.
I love that you have that global focus.
Yeah, when you think about it, we're a profession that's constantly expanding. I love to use the analogy of the universe. We're constantly growing and expanding. What marketing looks like today is different than 20 years ago, and it's going to be different than what we're going to see 20 years in the future. And so having a profession that's resilient and creative and dynamic is what we're passionate about, leading an organization that can support that. We're not anchored into any one, marketing can only be this and never that.
Oh, 100%. That's such a great analogy. And I love that your leadership at AMA really emphasizes that importance on embracing disruptive change, which,
Right.
boy, have we seen that in the marketing industry. So what are you seeing on that front?
We really have. I talk to my team about this all the time. And when people ask about coming into roles, and it was started off in jest, but it's really true. No one brings me in to do the same things they were doing. My background, expertise, and really view for how we impact the world is about how do we create productive and dynamic change. And sometimes it's a bit of creative destruction. Sometimes it's a bit of doubling down on what we know. How do we create that? And so for marketing, it's really about the fact that we live in a space in which marketing is more democratic. Like everyone can have a space in that space. Now, the challenge is it's beyond at a point in time where everybody thought they had a viewpoint of marketing, which is very different than everybody having the skills and techniques and tools to engage in marketing. And so we see that as we grow, the tools are more dynamic. Data is richer. the responsibilities are greater, and the opportunity to really change your mission, your team, your career are so accelerated now, like we've never seen before, right? And so that's when we look at change, we look at it's not very long in any conversation before you mention the word AI. When marketing, machine learning, and algorithmic learning have been a part of marketing tools for the last 10 years, easily. So it's just that in the past 18 months to 24 months, we've seen generative AI emerge. And one of the things we're seeing in our research is marketers are actually, of any industry, marketers are the most likely to be using, testing, playing, and trying AI tools today than any other industry. So not only are we seeing that disrupt our space, we're actually learning how to build and navigate those tools. I'm excited about what we're going to see in a profession in a few years. It has that energy that comes in. It's going to be dynamic. It's going to change. We're helping people guide through how do you win the future? How do you navigate the future? And how do you quell the fear that can come from all that change?
One thing I want to call out for our listeners if they missed it was that creating productive and dynamic change. Wow, that's powerful. And that's the goal for marketers. That's huge.
It really is. When you think about our organizations, that's what we're called into action to do as
Yeah.
marketers, right? We're called to push through how do we have an impact on society by making things available, making things better, more dynamic, having a better path for communication. It's not just widgets that we are involved in marketing. It can be a cause for social action. It can be a nonprofit theme. It can be any number of things that help us move forward. I know, are there new practices? Are there new services? Are there new businesses that add to our experience? Marketing is a part of that space. And so many of our organizations, when you listen to the language of the executive suite, of the leaders, it's all marketing language, right? Customer engagement, customer empathy, knowledge and data, privacy. These are all marketing, ethical engagement, technology. These are all things that are so much a part of marketing's portfolio of skills and wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's great. And I also love that you brought up AI so early in our conversation because obviously everyone talks.
That was not my intention. That was not my intention. We have a running joke of how long can we go in a conversation without bringing up AI. And it's an important part of that. I happened to be in a discussion a few months ago, and it was really wonderful. The gentleman who was leading the discussion talked about the fact that, yes, AI takes up all the oxygen in the room in the conversations. But as a futurist and someone looking at what's next in profession, he always likes to ask the question, if we put a pin in AI, we put a pin in the big topic that takes all the oxygen, what are the other things that are important that we should be considering as well? And that's been a really great point for us to have continued conversations because AI is transformative, right? It's a big idea in a space in there. But even if we weren't talking AI in this moment, there are a lot of other big dynamic things happening in marketing that deserve and require our attention, respect, stewardship, and navigation. We think about privacy and advertising concerns and global engagement and ethical practice. These are all things that are still emerging in what's going to shape the future of marketing as well.
That's such good perspective. And we're talking about how quickly marketing is evolving. How
Yes.
can professionals balance leveraging those best practices with also embracing the next practices?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, to know that, to give yourself that grace that it's going to be a balance, right? So there are core things that are still a part of marketing. Even today, the 4 Ps of marketing are still important. Price, promotion, product, positioning. Now we have new tools and we have customer behavior to see that it's modified over 60 years in which Philip Kotler first wrote that to what we see today. But that's still a part of kind of these emerging practices. We know that our products change and our tools change and thus customer experience expectations change. So being agile as a marketing leader to know that when you think about your product, being focused on thinking about your product and promotion are tried and true practices that you should have. But what tools you have and the way in which consumers and organizations are going to embrace, being attuned to the fact that those are going to be constantly evolving and that what are ways that you can be a part of it. Not every marketing team or campaign is about jumping on the bleeding edge activity or the first of the technology space in there. That's not really what it's about, but being open to know that your world is changing and how can you take advantage of it, either through tools, through positioning, or through better understanding of what your audience and customers need.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm thinking of so many of our smaller associations and the marketers there. A
Right.
lot of times they're one person shops. And
Yeah.
so to give yourself that grace, but to also think, how can I use these new tools? What can I try? But always come back to your core mission of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. I love the dynamism that we deal with it in this space, that when you're a smaller marketing agency or smaller marketing concern or shop of one, you always fantasize of what the bigger group can do. The reality is, in our world, all the bigger organizations are trying to have the intimacy that you can have as a smaller group that definitely understands what your customer is doing today. The tools and environments that we have allow us to really equalize that.
I love that way
So
of
that
thinking.
smaller concerns can have impact and access to things, technology and resources that bigger concerns can have. But then bigger concerns can have that level of intimacy in terms of experience, in terms of proximity, in terms of customer need, that they can create more compelling stories and journeys that comes together. So that's some of the fun, the dynamism that happens in marketing, right? So a startup can challenge a big concern any day. A legacy company can persevere fresh and new on the next day with the world that we live in now.
Yeah, that's amazing to think about it that way. So you have a podcast called Marketing and you
I do.
dive right into future work, communities, AI, all of these different hot topics through a marketing lens. I want to get back to AI. No, we're not going to put
Huh?
in it. We're going to talk AI.
Okay. All
So
right. All
how are
right.
you seeing it really shaping the future of marketing and like from the ethical standpoint? What should people be
What
thinking?
I think it calls us to act as leaders, right? We can't be spectators in a profession in there. We can't be in a space in which tools are being changed, regimes are changing in terms of responsibilities and rights, and we sit quietly as a profession. We're actors in the space. So just because we can do something, we're fond of saying, doesn't mean we should.
Yes.
And so I think in terms of our kind of ethical space, we see that as things are being shaped in there, that we can define. This is still the early days of AI. We're fond of saying, and these are technical terms, that this is the dumbest AI you're ever going to work with. Now let that sink in, because our minds have been blown about things we've seen and the potential over the last 2 years in particular. Now think of that as the starting point. How much better, how much more dynamic, how much more evolved are we looking at this transformative space? But there's an opportunity for marketers and marketing leaders to say, this is how we show up as a profession. That's what really helps to build a profession, right? We, as a professional organization, we're helped to establish best and better practices. We want to establish ethical norms. So there's a space in which when marketers show up in a team, or marketers show up in an organization, or marketers show up in space, that you can be confident that we're doing the right ethical things to steward the industry, the profession, and craft. Right?
That's such a great just approach. And I love hearing that's how you're tackling it because I think in a lot of other industries, you said how marketers are some of the first people in on this and they're trying things and trying new things. I think
Right.
there's a lot of fear from a lot of other people, and that's going to hold back on learning. So embracing, but still having that, we'll come back to doing what's right attitude.
Yeah. We have to play. We have to explore the tools, right? That's where the innovation happens. But sitting in there, like, what can this do? What problems can it solve? Also, being mindful of what problems does it create?
Yeah.
And what's our point of view on those things that happen there? We're going to have a lot more ethical challenges, concerns with the new technologies and expectations tomorrow than we did yesterday. But we, as a profession, were involved in solving those challenges in business before. So this is an opportunity, and it's our right to steward that space as well, right? You can't just use the tools, not be mindful of what impact it has on the world around you, communities, business, and space, and just step away. Like, we have to be involved in that. And to your point, encouraging, engaging in there is one of the ways that we're challenging and supporting our communities to work through the fear. So the conversation has been, AI won't take your job, but a person who understands how to use AI will. Right? And that's a different way of thinking about the space in there. So it speaks to that fear that this creative destruction that has, and it's going to change the way we work and think about it. But if you think about it as a tool, it can enhance the work that we do. But we should be an active part of it in shaping that future.
Yeah. We do work more on the PR side of things than marketing, but I'm a huge proponent of AI and I just want to learn everything and see what can work. Again, within bounds of being smart, we have things right in our contracts with clients that we will be super transparent with you about anything we do with AI. We want you to know we're using it, because
Right.
we don't want to be afraid that they're going to think I could use AI to replace my PR agency. We want them to
Right.
think our PR
Right.
agency knows this AI stuff. We want them
Right.
there. But I do think what's interesting, and I by no means envy the teachers. I know they're in a really hard position with AI and what you do with it. But we're seeing our
Right.
younger staff almost have more fear of trying it than some of our older staff because it was just beaten into them in college that ChatGPT is cheating. You can't use this. And now I'm saying, no,
Right.
I want you to use this. Let's try it. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think experimentation and trying is important, right?
Yep.
So the tools exist and they set the framework in there, but the tool is not the masterpiece. The tool is not the finished construction in there. It's a part of how do you bring those ideas to bear? How do you create the impact? How do you build the strategy? If you continue the metaphor, how do you build the sculptural work or the painting? Yes, you have a tool, but it's the power of how you wield it and how you think about it in the space. And I think we're still so early on in the space in there. As professionals and practitioners with a future forward face, we do ourselves a disservice if we're not thinking about it, not engaging with it.
Yeah, 100%. I think coming back to a core theme for marketers, though, so building strong communities, and that's for associations. That's why we're
Right.
here.
Right.
In today's digital first world, though, why are communities still so important, if not more important than ever?
Oh my goodness. Communities with a heavy emphasis on the plurality, right? Communities, because we're all a part of multiple communities, whether we recognize it or not in a space in there, they're important to how we navigate our world around us. It's important to how we think about professional associations and kind of a history of going back to guilds and professional practice or trade spaces in there. It's a way in which you learn how to navigate what it means to be a professional. It's how you navigate the work you're doing in there. We see that it's an opportunity for people to grow and inspire. We see multi-generational cross-functional mentorship that happens because it's not just I'm a senior person mentoring down. A lot of times it is the junior staff member who's pushing the new tools and techniques. It's an understanding as we look at having 4 generations in the workforce at one time now. It's that cross play. But then communities allow you to have a space. What we see a lot in our community when we talk about growth and professional development, I'll have members who are a member of an expert part of our community, expert in branding, but you're a novice in AI. And those two things can be true at the same time. You're a volunteer leader, you're a mentor to students on campus, but you're learning from your CMO.
Yeah.
Right? Two things can be true at the same time. Communities help and provide a way for us to navigate that. They're often that benefit that you didn't know you needed and you realize what would happen. I think I've talked to a lot of marketing people who are moving to new communities, right? You think about in that space, I'm generally moving from one city to another. Professional association often becomes your entry point to I'm moving from one space in my career to another. We talked earlier about going from being in-house in an organization to starting your own business, right? These are the areas, that sticky space in between where community shows up. But also, how do we then build best practice? How do we create a framework for celebration? How do we create a framework for stewardship around what it means to be in the profession? When we come into a profession, these are all things that we love, right? I think about this. I was a kid who just loved marketing, and now I get the privilege of being the kid who gets to run the marketing association.
Love it.
But there's some wonderfulness about like profession solving that question of what I want to be when I grow up. That's excitement, but there's also responsibility around that.
Yeah.
How do we create a profession that's worthy of a next generation wanting to be a part of it?
Yeah, that's great. And then when you have those communities from the marketer standpoint, how do you foster the true connection and the loyalty to those communities? Because I do think that's a lot harder when you're maybe not in an in-person environment or just in a more hybrid world.
I don't know if it's harder or easier, but it requires more intention, right? I think for sometimes we took things for granted before. We were really good at it pre-pandemic. We just took it for granted, right? This is an event that's happening. I can tell you I've been to some really robust, thought out, dynamic, wonderful events in the last couple of years that, let's be honest, people would have probably chalked it up and just put up a stanchion and a platter and called it a day in 2017. But now it's forced us because the investment of our time, our getting up and getting dressed and putting on real clothes and going out and taking a transportation, it needs to mean something.
Yeah.
But likewise, the fluidity in the way in which we can access events that we can pop in on a Zoom, not to overbrand it, but we can pop into a streaming space and be able to be a part of events that are happening globally at the drop of a dime without having any tension on that. And what does that look like? I think that we've seen, from a marketing perspective, an explosion of creativity around what it means to meet, convene, and have an event in there. It's broad open now, right? It's legitimate. You can have a video exchange, and that's an event and a meeting and a happening. Likewise, you can have a space. And think about it. If I'm an introvert, this conversation back and forth on Zoom may be more attractive in more way in which I build meaning and community, one-to-one, one-to-few, versus then dropping me into a traditional big hall network.
Right.
Right? Just, you think about it. That's how we approach a lot of these things. Just go in. And I know that our listeners have put more thought in all the things I just described. But as somebody who experienced 10 years ago before the pandemic, that's what we experienced.
Right.
But now to think about the way in which, are we doing the right things that I need for communities? Are we creating learning opportunities that fit with my learning style and need? Are we thinking about modes of engagement that fit with where I am as a professional or a practitioner, where I am in terms of my personal needs in there? I'm super extroverted. Do we create an extroverted space? I'm introverted. Do we have an introverted space? I'm looking to grow or expand in these ways. I'm looking to come in and out of communities and be a part of multiple, right? Do we create that for them? And I think that's where, from a marketing perspective, or just as we talk to the association, this is what the future space looks like, right? And people being able to choose their own adventure, if you will, on community space is important. And we provide the platform, the reason to be, and the motivation, but giving people that space.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I just went to an in-person event a couple months ago, and one thing I just thought was so unique and I loved, and maybe a lot of others are doing this, but there was a way to connect beforehand with attendees, and one person started a group chat with anyone that wanted to join, saying, hey, I'm an introvert and nothing stresses me out more than finding where to sit at lunch.
Yes.
And they were like, I'm going to this table. Who wants to join me for it? And planned that out before they got there. And I was like, what a smart way to address like something that would cause so much anxiety for some people otherwise.
It's a different space, right? 10 years ago, we wouldn't have done that, right? The tension still would have been there. We wouldn't have done that and had the space. Or thinking about how meaningful the environment needs to be in terms of a built space in there. And so I love that as a marketing brand person, right? I was always thinking about what makes a special experience. There's a lot more heavy lifting that comes in making that special experience now, right? Your members, the way in which we set up. I love the fact that when we're doing events, whether it's our academic community, our collegiate, or executives, they have a space that's unique and intentional to the work that we have in front of them and seeing the response. It's not the same space for everyone, but the intention that we're going to create a space that makes sense.
It's all about intentionality for sure. So another one of AMA's key focuses is around data-driven decision-making and ethical responsibility. Yes. I'd like to know how you see that role of ethical marketing evolving, especially as consumers are more informed and they're demanding transparency.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Right. And this goes back to speaking and understanding the audience, proverbially reading the room, right? The space in which this is what your consumers are demanding. So how many brands have had to change their stature and position because their customers demand different of them, right? And as marketing leaders, understanding that there's practices, it goes beyond just, I remember years ago when I was running strategy and marketing with the Better Business Bureau, we always talk about the fact that whether something was legal was really the base level. Like your ethical responsibility of building trust in the market space was higher than just whether or not something was legal. It doesn't matter if you're thinking about what's the right ways to approach engaging with your audience. What are the things that customers need and trust? Respect for privacy, respect for data, an engagement of having alignment with your brand, fulfilling your brand promises and purposes, right?
Yep.
So you can't be a brand that's about supporting the environment and constantly do things that are detrimental to the environment and have that sync with your audience. You can't have publicized aims of what you're going to do with no intention of following through, right? These are spaces in which you have to show up in terms of marketing. But as our consumer behaviors evolve, consumers understand, request more transparency. They want more engagement with the brands and the work that they do and feel a deeper connection. And so that's where we as marketers have a responsibility that if you're marketing true ethically to your brand and work you're doing, you see the data shows you see an increase in customer engagement, in employee engagement, and in bottom line for your cause and your business.
Yeah, I love that. For our listeners who are mostly association professionals, what kind of key strategies for them? Because the big thing for them is communicating that value prop, which can be really hard
Right.
and showing their value and building those connections with their members. What are some things you'd share with them for focusing on?
One of the things that I think really strongly about for associations is we need to be bold about taking leadership positions and thoughts about the future, right? So it's not about what the profession has been and has done. Yes, that's an inspiration. Yes, that goes into it, but it's about innovation in the future. I think about the model of many business schools where they're talking about innovation. They will in the same breath say they're 100 years old, they're 75 years old, but it's not about the 75 or 100 years. It is about the fact for the 75 years, their mission has been innovation. So the innovation may look different, but the cost of innovation is what they're about. I think as a professional association, you have to be thinking about the profession in the future and creating the opportunities, the resources, the safe space that your members need in advance, right? This isn't showing up in retrospect of what should have happened in the profession 20 years ago. This is how do we anticipate these are where things are going. Sometimes the innovations and tweaks are very slow. I'm sure there are professions out there who feel that way. Other times they're dynamic and disruptive and the profession looks completely different. I think if you're aiming for the future, you win either way, whether your space of change is slow or fast. And in today's world, you're hard pressed to find spaces that have slow paces of change, everything we're looking at. And if you're leading a professional association and you're not thinking about that, then you're missing a huge opportunity and blind spot because the world is thinking about that.
I'm literally going to cut this part of the recording and just send it to all my clients because that be bold in taking a leadership position, just amen. That's what associations are there for. And that's what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we talk about how do we create value to our profession and to our members and to the industry, which is this bigger concentric circle, right? Because the industry and your profession is always going to be bigger than just your members.
Yep.
Your members are a subset of that. You're going to continue to grow in there, but the good that you do elevates for everyone, right? And so how are you going to create that space in there? Because that's what ensures your relevance, right? So relevance, we talked with my teams about this for years, that relevance is a badge you have to earn every day, right? So you can't we were relevant 5 years ago. That's great, right? But in true financial jargon and language that you need, past performance is not an indicator of future results, right? That applies to that space in there because if everything else around you is changing, how do we lead in such a way that we are supporting the profession's growth, that we are empowering our volunteer leaders, that we are creating the resources that our members need to move forward so that this generous group of the work that my profession does is relevant. Why? Because it delivers this value, because it helps me think better, because it gives me more access, because it provides a community of support and strength and celebration, that it provides resources that go in, that these resources may evolve, right? They need to evolve, they need to change, but that spirit of innovation continues.
Yeah, love all of that. So let's look ahead. What are you most
Right.
excited about for future of the marketing profession and how are you helping your members get ready for that?
Oh my goodness. I'm excited about the fact that I know in 10 years, marketing will look completely different than it does today, yet still have the same soul and heart, right? I see some of the fastest growing spaces in marketing now are people who may not even consider themselves marketers.
Yeah.
When you think about our creator economy in space, these are creative business leaders who are doing all the things that are part of marketing, but may not naturally answer the cry if you say, hey, marketer, right? Because the language is different, but the practice and the space are similar. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the ways in which marketing as a true professional skill is becoming more democratized, not as a professional whim, right? Not you come in as a marketing comms person, there's always people who think they know what you're doing. Not that space in there. The fact that actually skills are being picked up and more people have access to tools to legitimately market in a proper way, like in an evolving way. That's exciting in that space in there. Democratizes, it means we'll see better marketing, right? It means that we'll see growth in small businesses. This gets me excited to our conversation before. If marketing can provide the tools and resources for a smaller business to compete in a big way on a big stage, I get excited about that. If it allows bigger companies to take a step back and find a way to be really impactful for communities and customers in a direct way, I get excited about that. If it's a space in which students and practitioners who may come from underserved spaces or spaces that didn't have access to marketing can be a part of the profession, that gets me excited.
Now I'm excited too. Your enthusiasm is just palpable and I love it. This has been great and just so many amazing insights. I know our listeners will love it. Before we let you go, we like to wrap up all of our
Yeah.
podcasts with our little lightning round so people can get to know you a little bit.
Oh my goodness.
So-
You're going to do this? All right, let's go for
First
it.
one's so easy. Tell me where you grew up.
I grew up in Washington, D.C. I am a native Washingtonian, third generation, raising two not so small now, fourth generation Washingtonians.
Amazing. All right, what's your go-to Starbucks order or favorite morning drink if you're not a Starbucks fan?
So I am not a coffee espresso fan. So I am definitely a hot green tea fan. So that is a space in there. But my go-to Starbucks order this time of year is a grande apple spiced, the warm cider. That is my go-to around this time of the year.
I'll have to try that. It's funny. I go to Starbucks a lot, and everyone assumes I drink coffee, but I shockingly have never had a cup of coffee in my life. I don't know why. I just had one sip and didn't like it and never tried it. But I love hot chocolate, so I'll go get my hot chocolate there. And now I was like, "Is this for your daughter?" And I'm like, "Oh no, that's for me. You don't need to do the kids version."
No. Embrace adult hot chocolate. I like it.
Yes. All right. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still work?
Yes.
All right.
Maybe not every day.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, because the things that I get a chance to work on, and this is one of the things I get excited about being in the professional association space, it is dynamically fun to, after our conversation, I'm headed to speak to a group of students
Nice.
to talk about my experiences marketing and leadership and about their careers. That's really rewarding, and there's not a financial conversation in that. That's really powerful. So I would still do that. You know, I might not complete reports though.
I hear you.
Just saying it. That seems like the lottery would allow me to compromise on
That's
that
a
one.
fair compromise. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All right. What's the last show that you binge watched?
Oh my goodness. You're going to have me say this out loud.
No, I'm excited.
No, don't be excited. I'm just saying what I watched. So this weekend, I watched all 4 episodes of Chimp Crazy. I did, because they had 4 episodes on HBO, and I started watching a bit of it, but I was like, oh, I'll wait till the 4th one comes out. And then I just knocked it out this weekend. And I tried to get my other family to join in with me like we did with Tiger King during the pandemic, but it's a different time. They all ignored me. And so I sat there and watched Chimp Crazy by myself.
So funny.
It was magnificent. I know you wanted a more stellar, erudite offering that I watched, but legitimately, I just watched it this weekend.
That's all good. That's what we're looking for. For me, unfortunately, it's just Bluey right now because that's our life.
That is where you are. I'm just saying that's what I watched this past weekend, and next weekend it may be something
Love
else.
it. Awesome. What's a food you can't live without?
Oh my goodness, what food I can't live without? It would be anything on the culinary spectrum of Japanese food and Indian food, probably as a tie.
Nice. And finally, what is your bucket list travel destination?
Oh my goodness. So what was big on the bucket list, I actually got a chance to go last year. I went to Iceland for my birthday and got a chance to ride horses in the mountains and see the northern lights as my birthday approached.
That's amazing.
So I stood outside on a volcanic rock of black volcanic sand in the middle of Iceland, freezing my butt off under the northern lights. And that was on the list, and it was awesome and incredible. And I'm going to be the travel consultant and encourage everybody to do this.
I'm so jealous. That is on my list for sure.
Yes. And it was a trip that kind of came up, and we planned but didn't plan, and we did it and had a blast.
Amazing. Awesome. Bennie, I can't thank you enough. This has been so great and so many good insights, and just really appreciate you sharing your time with us on the A100 today.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for this work and sharing with our association peers. I think marketing is an incredible profession. I know I'm biased, but I think the data point holds out that it's a great way for us to move our society, our community, our businesses forward through marketing. Thank you all. I encourage people to check us out at ama.org and check out the work that we're doing. We'd love to have you as a part of our membership and our community.
Awesome. Thanks, Bennie.
That's a wrap for today's episode. The Association 100 podcast is a production of Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications, where our mission is to make associations and nonprofits the go-to source in their industries through earned media and thought leadership. This podcast is an extension of the A100 newsletter, a bi-monthly collection of best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies delivered straight to your inbox. Have you undertaken a big change at your association, or do you have some words of wisdom for the trenches of association life? We want to hear from you, and so do our listeners. Drop us a note at info@onwardupward.com. That's info@onwardupward.com. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share with your friends and colleagues. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. Come back next week for more association inspiration and insights. Thanks for tuning in.